Good day, students. Today it is time for the 6th installment of this series, where I attempt to give you an overview of each unit's Eidolons and my recommendations on whether or not they are worth the Stellar Jade's investment. Going on a vertical investment on your account might not be the best option, given the number of good units released in recent patches. If you are looking to enhance your established roster of units the smart way, this series might be just the thing for you. For my guilty pleasure and going by the number of released characters, the developer's guilty pleasure as well, let us analyze potential improvements for the Nihility cast through their Eidolons. Please note that these recommendations are based on my personal experience with the units, how they perform at E0, and what they lack in their base form. As such, I have formulated this guide based on the importance of each Eidolon in fixing a particular unit problem from its base kit. This guide is highly subjected to subjectivity on my end, even though I have tried to keep it as objective as possible. Therefore, if you feel a certain Eidolon works better for you compared to what I am about to mention, that is entirely your prerogative, and each and every one of you is entitled to play the game as you want. As always, every piece of content in this game can be fully cleared with E0 units without issue. Moving on, I will briefly go over each unit's strengths and weaknesses in the next section, so you will better understand the upcoming analysis of each of their Eidolons. Also, each Eidolon will be analyzed, considering you already had the previous Eidolon and are debating the investment needed to secure the one in question as well. This is why you will see some units have their E1 not recommended, but their E2 recommended. I will not go over the E3 and E5 Eidolons of the units, because these are just extra levels for all your abilities on each unit. And of course, all of them are worth getting because they are just straight-up damage buffs for each of the units. I will just leave you with a note on which unit is applicable, so you can know which one of the two will provide the most damage. At the end of this portion of the video, let's take a look at what you should be looking for in units on this path. For Nihility units, you want to aim for the Eidolons, which will provide your unit with additional ways of landing your effects, as well as those that will add additional effects different from the ones in the base kit. Eidolons that increase their multipliers or stats by a good margin are also great. Eidolons that provide you with energy are always great, so you can smooth out your rotation. Gwynaphen works well as a sub-DPS focused on damage amplifications, can detonate her own DOT, has pretty decent damage numbers, and is pretty efficient. Requires a bit of investment in her stats to keep going, although her damage amplification can be used by every DPS, she fits better in DOT compositions. Luca. Like Gwynaphen, he can trigger his own DOT, has the ability to strip a buff from the enemy, which is a rare ability, and can also work as a damage amplifier unit. Fully single target, hence he will struggle with harder contents, and like Gwynaphen, he prefers DOT compositions despite his universal damage amplification. Pela. She can be slotted in every type of composition as her AoE defense shred is universally desired. She can also remove a buff from an enemy. She has a good SP economy, and she can cycle her ultimate quite consistently. The biggest inconvenience is that she is a 4-star, and she lacks a bit of the stats 5 stars have, and there aren't that many alternatives for a light cone on her, except those which are found on banners if you didn't get the tutorial light cone. Sampo, good DOT sub-DPS. He can amplify the DOTs on the enemy, and he can also break the shields quite efficiently, especially in single-target scenarios. Works well in both single-target and AoE scenarios. It requires quite a bit of investment in his stats to get going, and he also needs a bit of time at the start of the battle to stack his DOT. Like Pela, there aren't that many light cones for him, besides the ones from banners. Acheron. Absolutely insane damage potential as she is purely a DPS unit, and everything in her kit is aimed at boosting her damage. Forgoes the need for energy in order to cast her ultimate, and can be used against any enemy as her ultimate ignores the element weakness of the enemy. I have to once again take my hat off to IX. He sure knows how to make them. limited ally options, as she wants at least one additional Nihility unit paired with her to maximize her damage, 2 being ideal. And she also wants as many debuffs as possible so she can cycle through her ultimate as much as possible, since this is where 90% of her damage comes from. Black Swan. Obscene amount of damage, especially in AoE scenarios. AoE defense down on her skill, making her a blast version of Pela, meaning she is more flexible than meets the eye. She gets even more defense ignore from her talent and can be very flexible with her skill point usage depending on what you are fighting. A huge stat investment is needed to truly maximize her DPS. She needs a bit of practice to truly get her nuances. Kafka. Amazing in both single and AoE scenarios, she was hypercharged with the release of Black Swan, as she can detonate both her own DOTs and her allies as well with her skill and ultimate. She also has decent energy generation in her base kit, so she can cycle her ultimate much faster. She needs a lot of investment in her relic stats to maximize them, and the light cone options are fairly limited for her to perform at a higher level. Silverwolf can enable you to run the same team against all types of content regardless of the enemy weakness. Huge amount of debuffs in her base kit, including a big defense down from her ultimate, so any unit that loves having debuff will love her. She also deals some good damage if built correctly. Fully single target, so you cannot rely on her for harder content, since by now every element has been fleshed out with new units and more coming. She lost a bit of value since people have more options to run instead of the same team every time. Also, potentially very RNG dependent with her weakness implant. Welt. There are a good amount of debuffs in his base kit, including slows and imprisonment, so like Silver Wolf, he is a good partner for everyone who loves debuffs. Can work well in both AoE and single target scenarios, has a deceptively high damage output of his own, and is a good amplifier with his damage increase debuff from his ultimate. While he is good in AoE, he can also have his moments of failure if the bounces from his skill do not land properly. His debuffs are not that valuable compared to some other ones which his Nihility colleagues possess, like Defense Down. Gwynaphen, E1, adds a nice effect resistance debuff to her skill, which will help reduce the amount of effect hit rate you will have to build not only on her, but on her allies as well. Good quality of life, especially in DOT compositions. E2. With a decent increase in her burn multiplier, this one will be her biggest damage increase. Therefore, it is a good pickup to maximize her damage. E4. A bit of an energy gain, which is always appreciated, but it is too low to have a big impact. Therefore, it is not recommended. E6. The additional Fire Kiss stack will boost the overall team damage by a decent amount. Hence, this is also a good pickup. Luca. E1. Small damage increase for himself, too small in fact to be worth it. E2. Good pickup, especially against enemies weak to physical. But if you plan on using him against enemies not weak to physical, this one will not activate. Therefore, it is not recommended in this case. E4. A decent attack buff that will help increase his DOT damage is a good pickup if you want to maximize his damage. E6. Gives him the ability to detonate his own bleeds, which is a pretty good damage increase and makes him more attractive as a sub-DPS, making this a good pickup. Pela. E1. Good energy gain, improving the speed at which she gets her ultimate, which is basically what she wants. E2. A small speed buff tied to a fairly restrictive activation since you won't get the chance to remove a buff from the enemy consistently. Not recommended. E4. Great pickup, especially when you pair her with an ice DPS, as elemental resistance reduction is pretty rare as a debuff. E6. Just don't. You won't have enough damage stats on her for this to matter. Sampo, E1. This additional instance of damage will help boost his shield breaking and damage, mostly in single-target scenarios, since it can bounce to the wrong target. Good pickup, as all in all, it also increases the chance to apply his DOT. E2. This one also works great in AoE scenarios, as the wind shear stacks will be transferred to the newly spawned enemies after the previous ones are defeated. Also a good pickup. E4. In a truly Nihility DOT way, he also gets the ability to detonate his own DOT damage, but with the introduction of Black Swan, her wind shear as well, making this one more attractive if you plan on using them together. E6. Just like Ganefin, he gets a multiplier increase for his DOT damage, turning them into some pretty respectable nukes. Great pickup to maximize his damage. Acheron, E1. As you will want to have the enemy permanently debuffed when playing, this is pretty much a permanent 18% crit rate buff, which can reduce the need for crit from your relics. But if you have good relic pieces, this one is not recommended. E2. Incredible pickup for her, as it will not only reduce the need for Nihility partners to get the maximum buff from her trace, but it will also speed up the gain of her ultimate stacks, allowing her to use it every 2 to 3 turns depending on the composition. E4. A rather small damage increase, but nonetheless, it also helps her reach her ultimate quicker, as this will add 1 debuff to each of them at spawn. Good pickup for the accelerated ultimate gain. E6. Pretty bonkers effect. This one will not only increase her damage from the additional resistance penetration, it will also allow her to have more damage in her non-ultimate window by boosting the damage done by both her basic and skill. Amazing pickup for every simp out there. Black Swan, E1. Continuing with another absurd effect, this one will boost not only her own damage, but the damage of her allies as well, and in DOT compositions, it will also have a pretty much permanent uptime. Amazing pickup. E2. Improves her Arcana stacking, as it will inflict additional stacks upon an enemy defeat. Good damage increase, but not really worth the investment. E4. Helps her energy problems and lowers her hit rate requirements from 156% hit rate to about 120%. Also not that great. E6. Again, more Arcana stacks, which translates to more damage. If you want to see her absolute biggest DOT numbers, go for it. But in my opinion, E1 is the best stopping point. Kafka, E1. More DOT damage received by the target of her follow-up, but since the follow-up is a single-target attack, this one will see more benefits in single-target scenarios. Good pickup to maximize her potential, but it is by no means recommended. E2. A 25% DOT damage increase with a permanent uptime is a pretty good damage increase for your team. This one is also a good pickup, especially in DOT compositions, and even more so in a team with Black Swan, where Swan's own damage will really feel this addition. E4. Even more energy gain, but the one from her base kit is more than enough, hence this one is not recommended. E6. Huge damage increase for her, as it will increase her DOT multiplier by a pretty big amount. If you want to see everything go boom and max out her damage, this one is a great pick. Silverwolf, E1. Great energy generation for her, and it kind of gets out of hand if you also equip the tutorial light cone. Good pickup to guarantee faster ultimate cycling, which will net you more damage over the course of the fight. E2. The effect resistance reduction provided by this one will drastically lower the effect hit rate needed on your units to land their debuffs or DOTs. Also, a good pickup for the quality of life it has for your team building and for the indirect damage increase from landing your abilities consistently. E4. From this point, her damage starts going up by quite a bit, so if you plan on building her more on the DPS side, this one is a good pickup. Otherwise, if you are using her just as debuffer spammer, this one is not recommended. E6. Complementary with her E4 effect, this will really complete her damage potential for anyone out there looking to do so. But just like her E4, if you are using her for landing her effects, this one is also not recommended. Welt. E1. A fairly low damage increase for his basic and skill after each use of his ultimate, therefore it is not recommended. E2. An energy gain that should occur fairly often, allowing him to get to his ultimate faster, boosting the overall team damage in the process, and also, since you have his E1 at this point, his own damage, as he will get his enhanced basic and skill more often. E4. Lowers the hit rate requirements on him to land his slow, allowing him to better control the battlefield. Decent, but not a necessary pickup unless you want to maximize his damage stats. E6. The additional bounce from his skill will be quite significant, as it will provide him with extra slows, toughness bar damage, and of course damage. All in all, he will get the most damage increase from this, so if you're looking to maximize his damage, this is the Eidolon for you. I think those were enough attractive units for one day. I will leave you with the hope that you can now properly ascertain the strength of each Nihility unit, as well as their weaknesses, and can start planning ahead for which one of them to target when they rerun, or when they will spook you after a 50-50 loss. As I have asked you in every video of this series thus far, tell me what your plan of action is for the future. Are you planning on vertically investing in your Nihility units? And if so, how far are you planning to go, or how far have you already gotten? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I am Professor Veritas Ratio, and remember, stay smart and sexy.